Hello and welcome back to Vox Terra. Today, let me start off with a news clip from Democracy Now! Of September 29th of 2022. Hurricane Ian made landfall on Florida's Gulf Coast, one of the strongest hurricanes ever to hit the continental United States, crashing ashore Wednesday afternoon near Naples. High winds and storm surges devastated coastal communities, while forecasters say torrential rains will continue to bring life-threatening flooding to much of Florida in the coming hours and days. Ian forced the evacuation of more than 1.8 million Florida homes and knocked out power to some 2.5 million people, many of whom lack clean tap water. Lee County Sheriff says hundreds of people may have died in the storm. Well, no, too, it's not just Florida that's been hit hard. And think back over the summer. Puerto Rico with Fiona. Pakistan, a third of the country underwater. China blasting severe heat waves. The U.S. heat waves. Europe heat waves and wildfire even in England and France. Well, with the exception of Democracy Now!, so few media outlets ever tie these extreme weather conditions that are increasing ever and ever more back to the climate change mechanisms driving them. And you know by now what I think why that is. It's the power and influence of the fossil fuel petrochemical industry in our media. And it's also the fact that scientists tend to operate and think in terms of probability. So let's break down some of the probabilities here, and not just scientific, but a bit political as well. What's driving this? Well, I've studied from NOAA in the past to show that we are putting up nearly 40 billion tons of carbon in the atmosphere every year from the excessive burning of fossil fuels and other heat-trapping gases like methane. That is a lot, and these numbers should be amplified, but they're not being. Well, in addition to those billions of tons, there's millions of dollars, and for this I've studied you before too, going to American politicians from the fossil fuel petrochemical industries, ignored by the media. And the majority of that money is, I'm sorry to say, going to Republicans. That influences what they're saying. It must. Back to the science. We'll go into NASA. The Earth's atmosphere is 1.01 degrees Celsius hotter, or roughly 2 Fahrenheit hotter, than it was at the start of the Industrial Revolution. And most of that heating has been happening over the past 25 years. But not just the atmosphere, the oceans are heating too. Well, when you've got hotter oceans and hotter atmosphere, that changes everything, and that should be your starting point. So how that would affect the intensity and strength of hurricanes, torrential rains, and storm surges, I'm going to take you to the Natural Resources Defense Council and an article they first published back in 2018, I believe, but it's been updated in 2022. And any reporter or meteorologist could go to sites like these, the NRDC, NOAA, NASA, but they're not. So here is some of what that extra heat is doing or making more likely. Rising air temperatures. The hotter atmosphere, quoting NRDC, can hold and then dump more water. Well, I've shown you this numerous times. This is what is happening. There is more atmospheric moisture than there used to be, and intense rain patterns are on the rise. Heating oceans. Hotter oceans are giving up more moisture to the surrounding atmosphere and provide more energy for storms. Quoting the NRDC, since warm surface temperatures fuel hurricanes, a greater temperature increase means more energy, and that allows these storms to pack a bigger punch. Citing the EPA, this increased water vapor feeds weather systems that produce precipitation, increasing risk of heavy rain and snow. Next, sea level rise and storm surge. Storm surge is defined as when a powerful wind pushes ocean waters up onto the land. Well, since the sea level is rising and has risen, it's more likely now that when that powerful wind comes along, those ocean waters get pushed up onto the land. And that is what is happening. And then combine that with this increase in torrential rains. Well, citing NASA again, we've got about 4 inches of sea level rise going back to since 1993. But citing NOAA, they're looking at the past 100 years, pointing out about 10 to 12 inches of rise along the U.S. coastlines. And those rises are predicted to keep increasing, drastically so if we don't cut now extremely the amount of fossil fuels we're burning. Now, really interestingly, I think that sea level rise is not uniform. It can be regional, more extreme in some places, less so in others. Now, I don't have time to go really in depth into that, but part of that I addressed in an earlier video on the slowing of the Gulf Stream currents. So the Gulf Stream kind of keeps everything, the water's moving along, that sort of pile up on the U.S.'s east coast due to something called the Coriolis effect, the very rotation of the Earth pushing the water to one side. Well, as that Gulf Stream is weakening due to the heating planet, the heating of the Arctic in particular, the water is now piling up more than in the past. Another sea level rise feature. Now, sea level rise is also due to, as you probably well imagine, that melting Arctic ice. And also just the heat itself expands the water body. Well, speaking of melting Arctic ice and the weakening of the ocean currents, let's now talk about the weakening of the atmospheric currents, resulting in longer-lasting storms. Well, so too as that jet stream is weakening, getting more out of whack and more sluggish, the storms now tend to just linger in place longer, just dropping that torrential rain longer and longer than in the past. Now, if you didn't catch it in my other videos, the reason why these jet streams and Gulf streams are getting weaker and out of whack is because the Arctic is heating faster than the rest of the planet. And that's due to something called Arctic amplification or feedback loops. One easy example I've shared with you before is as that Arctic ice is retreating, there's less white to reflect heat off of the surface of the Arctic. Then more heat is absorbed by that dark ocean, melting more ice, reflecting less heat off, melting more ice. So these are called feedback loops, how because of this excessive burning of fossil fuels for so long, and the warnings about it being ignored, and the attempts to transition away being thwarted, global warming is taking on a life of its own. But remember, most of the studies I've looked at show two scenarios. One, business as usual, just keep going on your, as my grandmother would have said, merry way, burning all these fossil fuels, or cutting back drastically. The cutting back drastically is going to result in a far more manageable living situation for us. So, hey, I hope you found these explanations of some of the scientific as well as some of the political mechanisms driving our heating planet helpful and useful, and how those mechanisms in turn drive this more intense hurricanes we experience, or drive more intense storms in general. And if so, please make sure you're subscribed to my channel. You've clicked the notification bell so you know when I'm putting up a new video. You're liking, commenting, sincere constructive criticism, always welcome. Donating at Patreon. This takes a lot of time and opportunity cost to put these together. Thank you, Belle Lagrissi and Environmental Coffee House. And until next time, and as always, peace be with you.